Hi, this is Steve from LZ23 Strength, where we exert ourselves, elevate our health, and evolve in mind and body. And I'd like to start with a question today. Do you think anybody really knows, really knows what it takes for you and I to live longer, to live healthier, for our neighbors, for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people around the earth? Do they really know what it takes? The reason I want to raise that question is because I saw a statistic about how much money is spent on wellness and aging, longevity. Here in the United States, over $2 trillion is spent annually, and worldwide, the number is almost 7 trillion, and that's with a T, trillion. So it kind of makes me wonder, and I've fallen into this trap before, and I cautiously warn folks, be careful with your money. As well-intentioned as I'd like to believe that the majority are, it is still a very profitable business right now. It is a buzz to be concerned with health and longevity, and especially with all the things that are coming out. AI, a lot of folks are thinking that AI is going to extend our lifespan, health span, longevity, and a lot of bold claims are being put out there constantly. So I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because of a few things. If you stick to the end, I'm going to talk about 4 dangerous kind of areas that we need to be on guard against when it comes to this area of health span and longevity. Now, I love it. I think things can be done. I have my strong beliefs in certain areas, but we do have to be cautious in general in what we're listening to, taking in, even just the idea of how things can change, not only just the financial aspect of it, but how things change. Because in recent videos and in the past, I've made the point, and this is from other videos I've seen and research, that genetics play about a 20% role in our health span and longevity, and they don't. That 20% really comes into play in the later decades of our life. Well, just recently there was new research, and that's kind of shifted in a big way to about 50 to 55% is genetics, and it's not necessarily end of life decades that comes into focus or into play. So we used to believe that 80% was our lifestyle. Now it's about 50% or less that our lifestyle can affect. Now, I know there's nuances to that as well, but just that idea that on one hand, money drives a lot of things that we're hearing and things that are being, I want to say, pushed on the public. And then also there's always new research and studies and ideas. So a lot of times, especially I talk about this with diets, people get so narrow-minded and focused that this is the only way you can do something. So I just want to put out there to be cautious and to do your research and whatever you're going to spend your hard-earned money on, for sure, and also what you're going to believe in applying in your own life, in your own protocol, so to speak. You look at somebody like Brian Johnson. I've mentioned him before. A lot of people look at him as very extreme and odd. Some people love the things that he talks about. Some are kind of taken aback by how much money he spends. It's been estimated or reported over $2 million a year in trying to keep himself young and healthy. For his mindset is don't die. So a lot of people either love him or hate him, and I don't know if there's too many in between, but that's one aspect. And they also look at his life, how regimented his sleep routine is, his eating, just in general, and they don't think that that's the way that people should live. But everybody has their own opinion, so even the things that I talk about on my channel, I'm sure people have their differing opinions regarding that, but there's a term that I wanted to talk about that I think comes into play here. I don't think it's a real term, but in the business world, they say work-life balance, and I like to shift that around to health-life balance. And that's kind of, I think, what we need to be able to navigate this path that we hear so many different things about, so many reports and so many influencers out there. But before I get into that aspect, the work-life balance, it's interesting. I was just recently reading an article in Fortune magazine about Jeff Bezos, Reid Hoffman, Andrew Feldman, Eric Yuan, Jack Ma, Lucy Gao, billionaires. I believe they're all billionaires. They're not keen on the work-life balance term, and I think because they hustled and they sacrificed, and they're billionaires, but I think they gave up a lot to get to that. So the work-life balance doesn't sound good. And some people think of that as a cop-out, but I guess if you're really looking for the true meaning behind it, is trying to make sure that we live. And that's when I talk about health-life balance. You got to live. You got to enjoy life. What good is all of it if you're spending so much time and energy and money in different areas, and you're not really living, you're not enjoying life. So I think health-life balance is critical, and there are 4 things that I mentioned that there could be dangerous if we don't have that balance. So let me enumerate those 4 now. So there's 4 areas that we need to be on guard against. I'm sure you've heard of the term anorexia nervosa, but there's also another one that can affect somebody who's obsessed with trying to be healthy and have a good health span, longevity, and it's called orthorexia nervosa. And there is actually a rise in this, and I'm sure it's due to all the attention given to this area on the internet and videos, influencers, and a condition is characterized by an unhealthy, obsessive focus on eating pure and clean foods. So the diets can get progressively stricter, and then the shift of this comes where people get distressed or stressed out, feel guilty, and they get intense anxiety, shame, and a sense of failure if they're not living up to eating in this certain way. Now, there's enough anxiety in the world and stress that do we need to pile this kind of thing on top of that? So again, health-life balance. Yeah, you want to eat healthy as you can. I mean, I'm always a proponent. That's one of the 4 pillars is our nutrition, but you can't get so obsessive that it's going to affect you mentally, emotionally, and ruin your day. These kind of things shouldn't ruin our day. We just want to try to do better. The second area deals with social isolation and loss of enjoyment. And I think sometimes that's what's kind of thrown, as I mentioned before, Brian Johnson. People feel that he's so strict with his life that he doesn't get to enjoy people in general, friendships and things of that nature. He talks about these things, but it can happen where people avoid social settings. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to stick to their diet. They're going to miss an exercise routine that they want to get at. So they can avoid getting invitations or accepting invitations to go out to restaurants or to parties, social gatherings, or even travel. So become isolating because you're so laser focused. I have to do things in certain ways. So health-life balance would prevent somebody from going down that path. A third area is health anxiety, where constantly preoccupied with sicknesses and diseases and living in fear of getting something and constantly spending a lot of time researching excessively, looking for symptoms, and it's just again an obsession that's not healthy. We do the best we can to stay healthy, and we don't want to purposely put ourselves at risk, but it can have a negative impact, even especially now. There's so many wearables that give us phenomenal data, and it can be used in a positive way, but you can get off kilter or off track with it. I've done that before with my sleep. There have been times where I judge not how I feel when I get up, but what did my data say? Did I sleep good? Well, it can't be totally based on how many hours I slept necessarily, or how my REM sleep or deep sleep was. I want to try to do good in all of these things and have a good score, but there have been times where I've been bummed out or kind of ruined my day if I got a terrible sleep score. So while there's advantage to having the Aura Ring and Whoop and Fitbits and all sorts of things, your iPhone, iWatch, you don't want it to consume you and get so obsessive with it that it affects your health and your mood and joy. And the fourth area comes into play here is with that as well as financial and time cost. We talked about that earlier, how much money is being spent on it, and then even the time, how much time it takes to buy food, prepare food, to exercise, do the health research. We can become so consumed in all these things that it takes time away from any leisure activities and hobbies, connections with loved ones. So you're not really having fun, relationships, and those things are important if we're going to enjoy health span and longevity. There's two phrases that I found that I think are phenomenal when it comes to this. Optimal health focuses on nourishing the body to enjoy life. Obsessive health focuses on avoiding death, often by restricting the joy of living. So I think that's a powerful way of putting those two things out there. So even on this channel, the things that I try to encourage and propose, the four pillars of health span, I still firmly believe in those, and I'm going to constantly be looking at what influencers put out there, the research. I'm going to try not to let it control me. I'm going to try to use them as tools and as an aid for myself, and that's what I encourage you to do. Be aware of your finances, be aware of your time, and the other things you mentioned. Don't let it affect your relationships with your family and friends and others, because that's critical for health span and longevity. So I'd be curious what you think about this conversation. I encourage you to like and subscribe. Would appreciate that.